Tonight's character is probably relatively famous to you. I don't think you're going to have a whole lot of trouble. We're going to be talking about Martha. I'm sure you know the story. And we're going to look at Martha really in 3 glimpses. We meet her 3 times. And the phenomenal thing is the change in the 3rd event. That's really what we're going to get to. We first meet her here in Luke's Gospel, chapter 10. And this is verse 40, but let me read 38 through 42 when we first meet Martha. Now it came to pass, as they went, that they entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve you alone? Bid her therefore, or command her to come and help me. But Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things. But one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So no, I'm not going to go tell her to quit. Now, we meet Martha. She's distracted by a dinner she is preparing. Here is Jesus in your living room teaching. And where is she? She's in the kitchen cooking. Now, I'm sure Jesus would have enjoyed the dinner, and he probably wouldn't mind if it was just, put it in a slow cooker. Turn down the burner, let it sit there for a little bit. Not going to hurt him. You should be out there. I would be wanting to hear and see everything this man is doing. But she's distracted because she's preparing this big dinner. So she comes, of course, and who's she thinking about? She's thinking about the work she's doing, right? All right, well, let's talk about Martha then. This is our first peek at her. Tell her to come and help me. Okay? We've all done that. When we're working, it seems we're the only one doing anything. And so it's easy for us all to complain. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? So we consider these things, but we're looking here. Now, let's address this problem this way. Many older brothers and sisters, now Jaylene has a few of these, or Cake has a few of these. Many older brothers and sisters have an irritating tendency. I know because I got older brothers and sisters. And the irritation is they always want to take charge. Right? Here's big sister putting on a dinner. She's taking charge right away. And she wants to assign everybody a task or a job to do. I suppose this was a habit she developed growing up. We can easily see this pattern developing here even for her. Lazarus and Martha probably found it easy to push little Mary around, to make her go and do this. And when she didn't, you can imagine what big sis is thinking about little sister. Now, Martha was a worrier. We see that in here. She is a worrier about details. She is, for all intents and purposes, probably a perfectionist. But what makes it worse is where they live. You have to, it's part of their culture, part of the teaching of their land. When someone comes to your house, you have to give them something. You have to give them water for their feet. You have to give them something to eat, something to drink. You have to take care of these people. If a stranger knocks on your door, you have to take care of him. It's just part of the culture in which she grows up. So you take that socially required thing there of taking care of people, and all of a sudden now Martha doesn't want the neighbors to say she doesn't know how to take care of people. You don't want people to say, wow, we were over at Martha's house and wow, what a cheesy dinner that one was. Especially when they say, wow, the master, the healer, whatever, the preacher, whatever they wanted to call Jesus at that particular, he was in her house. And you know what she gave him? Bread and water. She didn't give him no fancy food. I would have cooked this big, delicious dinner. So now she's got all that social pressure on her. So she finds it hard. She doesn't want to be shamed. She doesn't want to end up being on Facebook and everybody talking about her. She doesn't want to be publicly shamed. So she finds it hard to relax now, as we could see. She's busy. From the moment people announce the fact that there's going to be a dinner, she gets busy. She is busy making sure that her guests are taken care of. This one particular guest, who was Jesus, she didn't hear him. She didn't hardly look his way except to interrupt him. You have to begin to wonder, what was he teaching? Probably something she could have used, right? But she stops his teaching and says to him, would you make my sister come and help me? I mean, suppose I'm up here preaching like this, and my daughter walks up here and says, Dad, would you make Jenna Mayer help me? I said, where's my Jenna Mayer? Well, she's over in the kitchen cooking. Well, why isn't she in the auditorium listening to the preaching? Well, she thought it was more important that she should be cooking right now, and well, I guess I'd have to reverse that. Jay would be cooking, and Kayleen, what are your names? Boy, you guys all look alike. Jenna Mayer would be in here because she's a studious child. She's studying about Jesus while my cake is off there baking and cooking for the church bazaar. And I'm supposed to stop teaching all of you so I can go out there and drag Jenna Mayer by the hair and say, get in that kitchen and help your big cousin or your auntie. You guys all look alike. I can't help it. Help your auntie. There you go. Hey, that was Martha stopping Jesus in the middle of his teaching to get him to bawl out her baby sister. Because her baby sister was sitting there next to Jesus, listening to every word he said. So Martha, though, is sweating all the details. How am I going to cut this meat? Who's going to sit at what table? How am I going to... Oh, did I get this right soup? Do I have the... She's sweating all these details. Again, there are those people who worry about the smallest of details. I'm not a detail person. I look at broad... Everything in me is a broad stroke. I look at an idea, but I don't nuance it down to the smallest of detail. But Martha was. She was extremely meticulous. And so the personal attention that she gave probably would have been better if she had stopped and listened. But she couldn't. She couldn't rest. She couldn't sit. She could see something that was out of place. People are going to talk about what a messy housekeeper I am. And you could see her constantly straightening up around the place, make everybody else in the room nervous. And that's really what she did. She kind of makes everybody nervous just by her having to run around. You can imagine if you're sitting down watching something and somebody in the room is constantly moving around, shaking and readjusting the pillows that you just crunched down or something like that. You'd kind of like, hey, I'm trying to relax here, right? You can't relax when there's somebody in the room who's not. And that was Martha. She was not a relaxed person. She was one who was constantly moving around. Now, as I said, we see her in three glimpses this way. We meet her later after this, and we get another glimpse of her. If you go to John chapter 11, in John 11, she is there at the resurrection of Lazarus. You remember? Now, here's when Jesus comes, and finds that Lazarus has been laid in the grave for 4 days. And so, John chapter 11, verse 18. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them. But what's Martha going to do? She's not going to let anybody comfort her. She has got to take charge, right? All right, that's Mary. This is Martha. And you're going to see this in this exchange she has with Jesus. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. She can't sit still. She ran to meet him. But Mary sat still in the house. There's Mary sitting still. There's Martha running again. This is their personalities. This is their conflict. Then Martha said unto Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Wow, stickler for detail. She noticed that. She noticed that Jesus was a healer and that he didn't heal. And go tell my sister. See that bossiness? Go tell my sister to help me. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. We see that same nature. She's quick. She's not, because of her attitude, she's not always thinking. We don't see her thoughtfulness. We only see her action. She's got to, instead of stopping and thinking about what she's about to say, she just says it. She doesn't. She's trying to organize and to straighten. She's not listening. And look who she's talking to. Sometimes there's a little bit of Martha in all of us. In our zeal to be perfectionists, we can miss the mark. In our zeal to be busy for the Lord, we could ignore him. And so here's Martha. Martha said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatever you would say, whatever you would ask God, God would give it to you. Really? Jesus said unto her, thy brother shall live. She doesn't really hear it though. Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection of the last day. And Jesus says unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whatsoever liveth, and whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? And she says, yea, Lord. I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. Yeah, I believe it up there. I think Mary would have gotten it. But Martha misses it. Again, she goes back to the fact in this meeting that they have when her brother is here. We see this inner conflict. We see this disappointment and hope. If you had been here, my brother would have lived. She's disappointed in Christ, but at the same time she's hoped. See, look at that. She ran to meet him and then questions him. She is disappointed in what he did, but she has hope in what he can do or will do. And so she's got this odd conjunction here together. So Jesus points out that her hope was too limited. You're waiting for me to raise him up. He came to raise Lazarus. That was his point in coming. And he's standing outside by the tomb, came all the way to Bethany for this purpose, and she's talking about over yonder there, where Jesus is talking about right now. I am the resurrection and the life. Yeah, I know you are over there. No, you don't understand. Look where we're standing. Your brother's just over there. I'm the resurrection and the life. She doesn't really see this connection. Her hope is a limited one. I know what Jesus can do. I know what he might do for other people. And that's sometimes our limiter. We know what he can do. I mean, he's after all God, the Almighty Creator, but you don't ask too much. We don't want to be expecting stuff. We don't want one of those who are waiting for miracles to happen. And so, Martha, again, who is, as I said, speaks without thinking. When Jesus says, where is Lazarus? What does she say? He's been dead 4 days now. By now he stinks. Didn't hear. Why would somebody who just said, I am the resurrection and the life, if you believe in me, though you die, yet you shall live. So now where's the body? Oh, he's been dead 4 days. He's going to stink. Really? That's your response to this? And this is Martha. See, she's not a clear thinker. She's a doer. She will do and do and do. She will run all day long and get stuff done. But she'll ignore Jesus. She'll be disappointed in him, and she doesn't hear clearly what he is teaching her, so she's always missing the target on it. She's worried about his decomposition. If you open that up, it's going to be unpleasant out here. Jesus isn't worried about any of that. Here's a man who could raise your brother from the dead, and you're worried about how bad your brother smells. But I want you to notice, in this picture, though, notice how Jesus is always patient with her. And I'm glad, because we're like this. We miss the picture a lot of times. We don't see what Jesus is coming to do in our life. We only see the circumstance. We see the busyness. Oh, no, you guys are all coming over. Now, you know what I got to do now? I'm going to be doing dishes. I'm going to have to cook. I'm going to have to this. Oh, why do I have to? You don't. You don't have to make it that big a thing. But Martha did. And so she created these huge obstacles and these huge tasks for herself. And Jesus said, it would really be much better if you just sat down here and listened to what I got to say. And so she just couldn't help. But in our last picture we see of Martha, well, let me go back and give you our outline real quick, and then I'll give you that last part. Okay. Here's the good. This is the good about Martha. She is known as a hospitable homemaker. That's good. Somebody who, when you come in, she's going to take care. You're going to get fed. You're going to get washed. She was known for being that kind of a person. When you came to her house, you knew you would be greeted, and you'd be greeted according to the custom of their day. You knew that. She believed in Jesus with what we would call a growing faith. She doesn't have all the faith that others we have met. She doesn't have the faith of her sister yet, who was the only person to know that Jesus was going to die, who came beforehand to anoint Jesus to his burial. The only person who got it, the disciples didn't get it. Martha clearly didn't get it. But Martha had, like so many of us, this growing faith, little by little, as God takes us down one road and then another, and we begin to realize, why did he do that? And then we might find out, oh, hey, that made me a little stronger. That made, and we begin to grow in Jesus as we experience these things. But it takes some time. She's a mature woman when we meet her. Her relationship to Christ was very good. He is called their friend, the friend of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And so they knew him quite well. I mean, when he was coming to Bethany, when 6 days before the Passover, when he was going to give his life, he spent the day with them. Of all the people he could have spent time with, he spent it here at Martha's house. So we have this strong desire to do, and this is the problem. It's good, but it can be a problem. She had a strong desire to do everything exactly right. We call that a perfectionist. Now, I am grateful that I am not. But some people are perfectionists, and you never get it right. They redo and redo and redo and rethink and rethink and rethink. And they don't get it done because they thought about it too much. And that was part of her problem. She didn't have time. She didn't have enough time in the day to do these things because she redid them. Set it over here. Wait, Set it over here. Wait. Set it over here. Wait. Set it back. Wait. Set it over. Constantly getting nothing accomplished because she could never settle in on any one thought. She was always running. She was always moving. She was always doing. She has a strong, and it's wonderful to have that desire to make sure things are done right. But when you let it become a problem in your life that you can't finally make that decision, it's not a good thing. And so let's look at the bad then in Martha's life. Oh, usually there's no bad. But she expected others to agree with her priorities. You know, people who are servants, it's referred to as a servant's heart, one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. The problem with being a servant is you like to serve, but you get upset when other people don't serve with you. You have this priority. Okay, get the cooking, get the cleaning, get the... Oh, Mary said, oh, I got to go hear what Jesus has to say. Wait, that's not high on my priority list. My priority is things to do. The things to do list is the priority. You can go off and enjoy yourself, but nothing is ever all done because you're a perfectionist and you're going to redo it, right? So she expects others to agree with her priorities. Go, Jesus, I'm over here cooking. I'm out there, I'm cooking. Would you go make her come out and help me? Jesus said, wait, you're wanting the wrong thing. She was expecting Jesus to see the same thing she saw, that she was busy. And how come I'm the only busy person? Because you're wrong. You should be sitting in here and listening to me. Now, he doesn't get after her much, does he? But he does point out that Mary asked for the right thing. She was overly concerned with details, and this is when it becomes an issue. She was overly concerned with the details. It caused her sometimes to say things without thinking. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Well, I come to fix that. Well, you better. But don't roll back that rock, because he's going to stink real bad. See, she tended to feel sorry for herself when her efforts were not One thing about people like this, you always have to tell them what a great job they're doing. If they make you a dinner and you don't recognize it and make them, wow, what am I slaving for? You could ruin their day just because you didn't say this was the greatest meal I ever had. There's a lot of Marthas. A lot of us have some Martha in us. We tend to feel sorry for ourselves when our efforts aren't recognized. Oh, well, they noticed his job. How come they didn't notice mine? See, that goes back to what we said a couple of weeks ago, that we work for Jesus. So long as he sees what I'm doing, I don't care who else sees. But Martha, she didn't care that Jesus saw. She was out in the kitchen when he was in the living room. She wanted everybody to know that she was in there sweating. She's probably making all kinds of a commotion, all kinds of sighs. Probably making as much noise as Jesus was preaching in their sign, just so everybody would know what a saint she was. Saint Martha. Saint Martha the persecuted. She didn't get the recognition that she thought she should have. And what did this do? It limited the power that Jesus had in her life. See, when we put Jesus, you see, her thought, oh, Jesus is coming, I got to cook him a dinner. Well, that was a noble thought. To feed him, to want to make sure but Jesus came to feed you. I'm the bread of life. And his bread would have been more important than hers any day of the week. So Jesus had limited power in her life. When he came to raise Lazarus, she didn't even see it. She bawls him out for not being there when they needed him, right? But we see a good thing in Martha when you go to chapter 12 of John. We'll finish this off in just a minute. In John chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, now she's had 2 meetings with Jesus, sort of got corrected by him, right? Look at John chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Then 6 days before the Passover came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which was dead, whom he raised from the dead. So 6 days before his own crucifixion, he comes to Bethany. There they made him a supper, and Martha served. And Lazarus was one of them that sat at table. The next verse is, and Mary broke that alabaster box and anointed him. Now I want you to notice at this particular moment the difference. The last time we meet, she's serving, but I want you to notice nothing is said. She is finally silent. There is no record of her saying, this is 2 events, we only see her 3 times. And 2 out of the 3 we hear her complaining. In the 3rd one, she's serving, but she's serving in silence. Probably the room is much quieter. It's a more smaller crowd, I would assume. But she's going around quietly serving. She isn't caring whether or not she is noticed anymore. She is serving Jesus, but she is doing it quietly, so as not to get in his way. She doesn't mind that her brother is sitting at the table, and she doesn't mind that her little sister is sitting at Jesus' feet. She doesn't make a complaint. She simply serves. And so as we look at Martha's life, we watch. She was getting caught up in details. This can make us forget our main reason for action. What was she supposed to be doing? She was supposed to be serving Jesus. Finally, in John 12, we see her quietly doing what she was supposed to do, which was serving the Lord, meeting the needs of the guests, but not distracting, not calling attention to herself. Remember, we told you she was one of those whose faith was in transition. She was learning to be faithful. And I think she learned it quite well, because on this 3rd meeting we have with her, she's quiet. She has a subtle, lady-like demeanor about her, instead of being boisterous and loud and demanding this and demanding that. We don't see that in this final meeting. There are none of those bad traits we saw. Yes, she's still serving, because that's who and what she is. And God isn't asking us to change from what we were. He's just asking us how we do it. See, it's not important what we do. It's more important how we do what we do. And so when you were serving the Lord, all things are to be done with quiet and with respect, decently and in order. Before, we could see how chaotic Martha was, and how chaotic Martha was making the scene around her. All of a sudden now she's quiet. She's doing her job, but she is not making a big scene, and she's not pointing out all the problems. She is just very ladylike, making sure that people have what they need, pulling back to the background, making sure that the Lord, and letting him talk, let him get his word out, not hers, not demanding, not criticizing, not complaining. See, here's the thing. You can get caught up in details and make us forget why we're there. And then notice number 2, there is a proper time to listen, and there's a proper time to work. There are those times when you and I can ask questions of Christ, but it's in our private hours. When we come in here to church, we're here to be quiet and respectful and to learn, right? Right now is not the time to be jumping up and complaining. Oh, Lord. We got that. We call it prayer time. And then we can sit. But there is a time for us to listen to Jesus, which is really what our life is all about. How are we going to be what he wants us to be if we don't listen to him as he tells us how to do it? So our Bible time is important. We have to read. I keep saying this over and over and over again. We have to read. It's the only way we're going to know him. He is not going to come down in a spaceship and beam you up and teach you stuff. He wrote it all down, and he's expecting you and I to open these pages and to read. And you and I have absolutely no reason not to, because we could, if I can't read and see these pages, I can get, like right now I got this on my laptop thing, I can sit there and make it as big as I want, or I can make it read it to me. So, we live in a very easy time to have our Bibles with us. So there's no excuse for us at all. So there's a proper time to listen to Jesus. Look at what Mary knew, because she sat at his feet and learned. She knew more than anybody else in her day and time. And in fact, Jesus said, wherever the gospel is preached, this story about her will be told as well. So she goes wherever he goes. The story is always out there. How many times do you hear stories of Mary? Quite a few. Probably more than you hear about Martha. When we hear about Martha, we're like, okay, he's going to bawl me out because I must be like Martha. And Mary, though, gets all the credit, right? So this is our lesson to learn. Listen to what he has got to say. Don't let it be distracted. We meet her in only 3. And maybe that's kind of like us. Maybe we have 3 meetings with Christ ourselves. And on that last one, I hope we're better improved. I hope when we meet him for our 3rd meeting, I'm that well changed. Look at the change in this lady. When you first meet her, and she's all loud and boisterous, and then the last time you meet her, she's all quiet, doing her job, same job she was doing before, but she had learned how to do it right. How to do it Christ's way.